Hello, everyone. I'm Boot. We're in New Jersey, and today, well, tomorrow, if you're watching this, happy Halloween. But if you're watching this today, don't do anything stupid. I know it's mischief night. We're basically here today to check out this expose interview that I did with a gentleman from Connecticut about 2 years ago during the pandemic, in the thick of things. And, we'd like to think that the government and companies have our best interest in mind, but they don't. And unfortunately, things fall through the cracks, and this was a big time for that to happen. So while we were all in lockdown, this is what happened.
Hello all, thank you for joining us as we step into the truth. Tonight, we have a young speaker who, after coming into a job where he thought he would make a difference, he discovered that it wasn't what he thought. He's here to give us not only his thoughts, but what he has found to be 100% dangerous, unbelievably, and ultimately he knows the risks. So he's ready to share. So the following may contain some things that might be unbelievable to others, but it has to be said. With that, I pass it on to you. Before the pandemic, I was fortunate enough to leave a job in healthcare. I worked for a durable medical equipment company, which is locally notorious for lying to its customers, failing to uphold delivery promises. They also fail to maintain expectations when it comes to their inventory. Patients still receive orders for O2 or O2 machines. Like portables, those are very difficult to fulfill because they don't have the stock. But I left that position. I was fortunate enough to go into education. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a teacher, and by a profound pseudo-randomness, which is just like coincidence, it became a permanent building. So before the pandemic began, I was teaching math, and then as the pandemic started, I transitioned from teaching math to teaching science. And while I was teaching, I helped my school with their COVID-19 compliance. I helped prepare the building to be ready for COVID compliance. Then while I was teaching, during this time, the Trump administration, Department of Education, they enacted policies which, in my opinion, strong-armed localities into choosing to either open or close schools. So it was either be fully online or adapt a hybrid structure, or just don't adapt a online structure. Adapted hybrid structure. I believe they were strong-armed into doing that because of funding, because schools' funding was tied to whether or not they opened. And that was per the Federal Department of Education's initiative under Betsy DeVos. So while I was teaching, I came across COVID-19 non-compliance, which was very unsettling for me because, one, I taught science, and two, I actually do have a higher education background in science lightly, so I am scientifically literate. So me working in the schools and seeing what I did, which was students who would test positive, that had contact with students from other teams, that had contact with teachers from other teams, and yet none of those people, including the kids, were ever required to be sent home. And that was honestly scary. And I lived with a family member who was high risk for COVID-19. So I had to make the personal decision to either stay and just accept what was going on, or be proactive and leave. And I should have reported it. However, I sincerely believe that even had I reported it, it wouldn't have made a difference because it was not the district's fault. It was the federal Department of Education's fault. So I don't believe that any fault goes on to the district that I was teaching at. I don't think any fault goes on to the city I taught in. I think that is the burden of the federal. So I made the decision to leave my job. So I applied to other positions, and I saw an opening for a contact tracer position. I applied for the position through AMN Healthcare. That's the contracting company. AMN Healthcare and Accenture were contracted by the state of Connecticut to train and manage contact tracers as well as their operations. Accenture was responsible for the training. AMN Healthcare was responsible for general operations. I became a contact tracer first. I was fortunate enough to get a promotion. I became a senior COVID call specialist with a footnote of being COVID-19 vaccine ambassador. Being a contact tracer, that entails calling people who test positive for COVID-19. I interview them. I document the information that they provide for the interview that we conduct with the residents who test positive. And then we also contact people who are exposed to those who test positive for COVID-19. That means we contact cases who are those who test positive, and we contact the people that are just simply exposed to cases. After I got the promotion to the ambassador position, the job for me became going out into the communities, going to different retail locations, specifically Walmart and Stop and Shop. And what we would do is sit at a table or stand, and we would promote the vaccine. So we would direct residents to the pharmacy. We would inform them that the vaccine was at the pharmacy. So if you were to come across me at my table with my coworker on your way into the store, I would say, if you're looking for a COVID-19 vaccine, it's free at the pharmacy, no appointment needed. It's a very simple job. All we do is we collect data and we redirect people to the pharmacy if they need a vaccine. And when they get a vaccine, like if they're a first timer, they come back and see us and we give them incentives, $20 gift cards. So my concerns stemmed first from the contact tracing position and then second from the ambassador position. I think it's just sensible to start with the ambassador position just because it has the bulk of the issues that I've dealt with most recently. And I think that the ambassador position, the challenges that I face there, especially in terms of accountability, all the challenges that I face because of accountability lacking in the job that I have now really is just the reason why I want to talk about it first. I don't know how to talk about it any other way. Like, I'm going to mince the words a little bit. But essentially, because it's the most recent one that I've dealt with, I want to talk about it first. But also the contact tracing concerns that I have, I do believe that's a heavier hit, so I want to talk about it second. So with the ambassador position, I had concerns regarding training, like I mentioned before, accountability, and they're pretty extensive. It took me a long time to not only make sure that I didn't feel crazy first about everything that I was noticing, but second, just making sure that I was grounded in what I was looking at. Like I mentioned before, I have concerns with accountability, I have concerns with training, and I also have concerns with incompetence. And I understand that they're very heavy concerns, but I do believe that they're appropriate. For the ambassador position, the actual job training was only about 3 hours. It was, to be frank, less than 3 hours. The person who conducted the training, which was actually the director for the ambassador program, she said that usually it doesn't take that long to do the training, usually it's pretty quick. So it's about 2.5 to 3 hours. I do believe that, and I could be wrong, recollecting what she said the training lasted typically. So I think we actually may have ran over a little bit because I had a big mouth and was posing some challenges in the training. Because I like to make dumb jokes, right? So, and I'm working on that. I need to work on my humor. But the training was shorter. We had less than an actual whole week of training. And we were expected to go out into the field and truly be up to par for the challenges that we would have faced. So we didn't even get a full day's worth of training to handle, say, challenges that come up from conspiracy theorists, from people that don't believe in the vaccine, from people that don't believe in COVID, from people that don't have faith in our institutions. And that's intense. You can't expect only a few hours of training to actually take care of that stuff. Right. And just to compare it to the contact tracer job, Contact tracers were trained for a full 40-hour work week. And I understand that we were either contact tracers or vaccine scheduling specialists going into this job, but it's a brand new job. It's a different position. There are different expectations, and we're in-person public facing.
I actually will tell you that yes, that 3 hours of training, there are multiple hours, at least 8 hours in training for telephone scheduling for the vaccine. Definitely know that for a fact.
And you're out of state.
Yeah,
So you're not even from Connecticut.
I'm from New Jersey, and what I have knowledge with is New York's protocol when it first started. That's all I could really say. At least 8 hours of training, if not more. So 3 hours of training to be face to face with people is a totally different animal.
Yeah. I know that right now ambassadors, they're currently training college students from Quinnipiac. And the students that are actually getting trained to do our jobs, the trainers have admitted to me that the students are receiving training that's much more intense than the training that we actually received. And we're the ones that went out into the field first. That's unfortunate because people have been held accountable already for mistakes in the field that, honestly, aren't even their fault. It was due to incompetence.
Yeah.
They didn't get adequate training. So we have college kids that are going through and they're receiving far more intense training than any of the other ambassadors.
Right.
And ambassadors who received inadequate training are the ones training these college kids, alongside like college professors. And that's unfortunate. And then also, tenured trainers that are training the college kids, they've been in their positions for less than 3 months. So it's either been around or less than 3 months. It's very interesting in a bad way, really. It's baffling. It's just ridiculous. The tenured ambassadors, they're involved with these roundtable initiatives and they work with other individuals. They've been given this directive to conduct like digital outreach and social media campaigns. And they weren't even screened or vetted for credentials on being able to approach those things. I asked management point blank, like, what were the criteria for considering people to go and do that stuff, and they didn't give me an answer. They just said, we just filled people. That's what they did. They didn't actually screen them for stuff that they wanted them to do, which actually is unfair to the people that they put in charge of those things. Because they were telling me that they didn't know what they had to do, and they were scared. And that's not fair to them.
Right.
Because if they perform poorly in their position, then they can lose their job, not from their own fault though. So they have to do these social media campaigns, they have to do the digital outreach, and frankly, those people that are in charge of that stuff couldn't even give them the training necessary on it anyways. They legitimately expected them to do it on their own, which is baffling because you would assume that there'd be some level of supervision, yeah, but there should be some level of just basic curriculum to provide these people so that way they can actually learn their jobs.
Right.
And, this is just the training concerns.
Yeah.
Like that's just training, there's still accountability.
Right. And how long has this program been in effect now?
From what I recall, and I could be wrong, I seriously could be wrong. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I think it's only been a few months.
Okay.
It hasn't been that long.
So, but it has been a few months. If that's a few months, they should have figured out how to go through this.
But also, we work under contract for a healthcare company, healthcare staffing solutions company that is supposed to be able to approach these things. And we actually, like I mentioned before, we work with a company that helps train us called Accenture. And for the ambassador training, Accenture was hands off. I don't know how that happened. I think it was a failure on AMN healthcare side.
Yeah.
I've trained with Accenture before for my other job, and Accenture prepared me to coach people, and they prepared me to be a trainer. I mean, I have my education experience in my pocket as well, but they did provide great material and they provided great guidance, and we did not have that for this. So I don't know how it happened, but I can only assume it's on the fall of AMN Healthcare. And when it comes to accountability too, like I was talking about before, right now the ambassadors, they lack accountability systems in their work. And I personally have been trying to encourage a sense of accountability in the work that we do. So whenever I'm on site with someone, I try to be accountable. I don't try to micromanage. I'm not a micromanager. I want everyone to operate independently. My thing is though, don't put me in a position where I have to choose between having fun with colleagues or keeping my job. Like, I'm gonna keep my job. And I'm in the position that I'm in because we lack accountability. So when I brought those concerns up to management, the supervisors ended up shunning and advising against peer-to-peer accountability. So they disallowed us from telling coworkers they shouldn't say miscount the data that we're collecting. So what we do is, as an ambassador, we count the total number of people at stores like Walmart, Stop and Shop, who are already vaccinated. We also count new inoculations, so like vaccines being given out to people on site. And we also count meaningful interactions with people that are at the stores, so Connecticut residents, right?
Right.
So if I'm on site and I see a coworker falsifying data, I'm not allowed to rectify the falsification per the supervisor's orders. I can't hold my coworkers accountable when it comes to falsifying data. It's disallowed. And the way that management has painted that, so let me actually give you an example of like how the falsification happens.
Okay.
So if you're walking by my table and I go, if you're looking for a COVID-19 vaccine, it's free at the pharmacy, no appointment needed, and you say, oh, that's okay, I'm all set. I can't count you saying all set as you having a vaccine. Right. But I have coworkers that are doing that, and that's ruining the integrity of the data.
Yeah.
That's a really big deal, especially because I'll put it out there, like I get paid $21 an hour to do this. And if people knew that would aggravate a lot of people, because if I'm at a table in public and I'm falsifying data and I'm getting paid $21 an hour to do that,
Right.
and this data is getting used to make reports for the public,
Right, of course.
specifically for the state, then that's an expensive lie.
Exactly.
And I'm not allowed, per the supervisor's orders, to actually stop that. So if I see my coworker falsifying data, I can't tell them not to do that.
Right.
What I have done in the past, and I've gotten really terrible pushback from my colleagues on what I've done, is if I see it, instead of calling them out directly, I'll go, just as a heads up, if someone says they're all set, we're not allowed to count that. But it still happens. And also, supervisors, they've shunned and heavily pushed back against workers reporting other workers for acting inappropriately in their positions anyways. So if I witness someone acting inappropriately in their position, it's discouraged for me to actually report it, because the managers are perceiving it as people acting as, and I quote, them, mini supervisors. Which, to be frank, look, I report people when they put me in a position where I have to choose between my job or them.
Right.
And it kind of makes me feel like they're trying to make me out be like a Dwight Schrute.
At that point, it's like, okay, when does the responsibility fall on your superiors for not taking action when they're telling you not to take action?
Right. And another example of inappropriate behavior is wage theft, right? So we're paid to be there during the weekdays until 6 o'clock. So we go on site for 12, then we stay until 6. So what people have been doing is they'll leave an hour early, they'll leave 30 minutes early, one or the other, depends on the person.
Still on the clock?
It's still on the clock. And they'll be out the door on the dot by either the hour early or the half hour early. So what I've tried to do with my coworkers is go, hey, maybe we should break down at 5:45 instead of leaving at 5:30.
Right.
My first 2 days of working too, I had someone tell me that the supervisor told them, our direct supervisor at the time, they resigned from their position. They told me that the supervisor directed us to do that, which is ridiculous. And another thing too is that they're just telling you that's what the supervisor said. The supervisor never told you that. So that it raised a little red flag for me.
Right.
And so after that, I started making sure that people weren't putting me into positions like that, because that's really risky for my job.
Right, of course.
Especially because we're part of Connecticut's response to the pandemic, right? So we're promoting the vaccine because we want to get as many shots in people's arms as possible, right?
Right.
Because that's going to help stop the spread of COVID. So early on, when I first started my job, I was telling people this, and they were like, "Oh, that's ridiculous. Why would they watch us?" But I was telling them that because we're part of this statewide effort, it would be ridiculous. It wouldn't make sense for us not to be watched by the state, for the state to check in and make sure that we're actually doing our job.
Especially because you guys are collecting data. You know what I mean? That goes towards more than just websites where they report the data. That also probably goes towards research as well.
Yeah. And it's weird that people genuinely disbelieved that we would ever get watched.
Right.
It's just ridiculous.
I'm just wondering, given the nature of this job, what the purpose of the job is, looked at vaccine sites. You have to have accurate information, which unfortunately we know we don't. There's been reports on in countless other areas. We know that the data is either fluctuating in a way that's not factual. So I'm just wondering why people wouldn't they would be watched at all. You know, that's just coming from me.
It's one of those ignorance is bliss kind of situations.
There you go.
If you
Easy way to
don't understand what accountability is like,
Right.
then you will not expect the common sense approach to making sure, say, a statewide initiative, which is also part of a federal coalition to stopping COVID-19, would work. So, if you don't understand accountability, you're not going to understand how accountability would be enacted for, say, a national initiative to stop a plague. So stuff was happening. People were leaving like an hour early, half hour early, depends on the person. And not only would they do that, but they were like pressuring other people to do it too. Like I was getting pressured a lot to do it. And whenever I gave pushback against people, it's actually wild the kind of responses that you would get from people. Like I had someone try to get me to leave like 30 minutes early, and they had spent the day like flirting with me, which was very uncomfortable. And then they actually told me that they were a brat and they tend to get what they want. And when I wouldn't leave early, they just left me at the table at the half hour mark, and they just walked around the store and left me alone, which is also not allowed because we have to work with a buddy. We have a buddy system, and they just totally disregarded it. It's ridiculous. I'm working with people who are older than me, and it's like I didn't know I was going to be working in a kindergarten. I'm not even a supervisor. It's ridiculous. But we've also actually have been discouraged from reporting workers when they do inappropriate actions that aren't limited to just what we were just talking about, right? So, like, when it came to workers making fun of residents, so making fun of people that live in Connecticut, when it came to, like, them making inappropriate jokes, a lot of sexual jokes on job sites, when it came to reporting people that are intentionally underperforming in their position as a way to sabotage the vaccine promotion efforts, not allowed to report that. And what's very unfortunate is that when they were sabotaging, it was because they had personal political beliefs that benefited from their inaction. So by them not promoting the vaccine, by them not counting as much, like that was a form of intentional inaction that deliberately hinders the awareness campaign that the state is looking to conduct to make sure that people actually get shots in their arms. And it boggles my mind that people intentionally go into these jobs and they just do that.
So guys, that was crazy. You know, there's a lot of things there that at the time, like, I really didn't agree with, but, you know, maintaining my journalistic integrity is a big thing. I really don't want to have to, you know, do interviews with things about things I don't agree with. However, you know, it's just something that really needed to come to the forefront. And unfortunately, this person was terminated from their job after they brought these concerns to their higher ups, which was really, really just an awful thing. And it really makes people afraid to take that step forward that they should take and be accountable. These are not just numbers, that go into a hole in the middle of nowhere. These are numbers that we use for research. These are numbers that we use to identify, potential threats in our areas, and, how big the COVID threat was in the world, to try to narrow it down to our small towns or states or even counties. Those numbers should be right. That you would think that the numbers would be legitimate. But, to find out that people were actually, doing this stuff. And the worst part of it is that they were not only taking the information and calling people, and people would be like, how'd you get my number and all that. But at the end of the day, some of these people were actually stealing information from people and using that personal information to try to gain credit cards. Just letting you know, I had to cut this down short for time. It was originally a 3-hour interview, so I didn't get the whole thing together. But, if there's some more in there that I get through, I will post that as well. But this is just going to be, what it is. This is just what I had done right now, and I wanted to get it out there because it's been 2 years. It's kind of awful when we think that these companies and the government have our best interests at heart, and we're protected from any of this stuff, but we're really not. We're really not protected at all. And it's kind of sad, and it speaks to the state of the entire world right now. It's just a complete and utter shit show. So, do your best to be that change in the world that you want to see. That's all I can say for now. So, with that, I leave the ball in your court, and I'd like you to leave me some comments down below with how you saw in your area things slip through the cracks during the pandemic. But anyway, with that, thank you guys for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks, guys. Bye.